Hello everyone, I'm Jane and welcome to my channel about museum and heritage interpretation. Visitor tours. We have all been on one at least once in our lifetime. They can take place in many different places. They can be at museums, in exhibitions, they can be outside, they can be at archaeological sites, in historical houses, castles, anywhere really. They are still probably the most well-known and used form of direct visitor interaction that museums and heritage sites use in their communication. Visitor tours have existed for a long time and they're really all about delivering your storytelling and your interpretation. It's a very direct way of interacting with audiences. Now, working in interpretation, you normally won't be the one delivering the guided tours. Normally you'll be working very closely with the front of house staff on this. So for example, tour guides or visitor assistants or visitor hosts or whatever title they might have. They are the ones delivering this experience, and that is a very special form of working, and it requires a very special mindset and approach. I want to address two different forms of tours today, one being the more sort of traditional guided tour that we all know, and the other one being dramatized tours, two very different ways of communicating and engaging with visitors. And I want to invite a special guest to help me address these two tour forms. Josepha Lembcke. She has been working on many different forms of guided tours over the years. She's been doing exhibition tours and dramatized tours at historical sites, and I really want to get her perspective on the visitor experience here and what it actually requires to deliver a really good visitor tour. Hi, Josepha. Thanks for joining me. It's good to see you again.
Hi, Jane.
I wanted to get your perspective on this because you have so much experience in doing so many different types of tours. First of all, just on a completely basic level, can you tell us a bit about what is a guided tour and what is a dramatized tour?
Well, a guided tour would be a person who has a knowledge of whatever thing it is they're talking about, who sort of curate information for the audience, I would say. It's very sort of clean in that sense. And a dramatized tour is I would say the same facts, but from the inside. So it's much more of not storytelling, but as if you went through the looking glass in a way. Yeah.
And you
I
also,
think, yeah.
you're often dressed up as a historical person, and you're quite literally taking people back in time and sort of involving them in a specific time area.
Well, I try to. It's there's a lot of thought that you have to put into it, because obviously I can't actually I mean, I don't have a time machine, but also there's just so many details that I wouldn't know or understand. And also I mean, if I actually behaved like a person from a different era, I might behave in a way that was completely unacceptable to my audience. So obviously I'm modifying and again curating the information. So, but it's just seen, it's fact seen from the inside rather than the outside, I would say.
Well, it must be a very different experience you're giving visitors, depending on if you are actually taking them on a sort of traditional guided tour as a tour guide or a host, or if you pretend to be a historical character and you're literally taking them on a time journey. It must be two very different experiences.
Well, I think I've taken the guided tour to a level where I am also a character in a sense, but the types of characters are different. I use my authority and I explain the space we're in when it's a guided tour, whereas I actually very much plunge people into a dramatized tour, because I can't start off by saying, hello, my name is really Josepha, and I'm a historian. No, I just go into character, and for both for me and for the audience, that is a very crucial moment, the starting point. Once you get going, it's less important, I think, whether it's dramatized or guided, because I do storytelling on both of them.
Do you feel like you have to be sort of more of an actor when you do dramatized tours, or is it really more about creating a positive experience or a memorable experience for the visitors, or a historical experience for them?
There is an element of acting, especially if I try to be of an age I'm not. If I'm an elderly woman or a man, I've tried to be a man once. People accepted it. Yeah, no, I do try to understand the character. So for me, there's a difference. But I think for the audience, the main difference, of course, is to accept that I'm not going to hold their hands in the same way as when I guide them, because it's much more a controlled environment when you guide rather than when you dramatize, because people can react to it in very different ways. Some might even get offended, or some are transported, you know, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So
you also kind of have to make people accept the game in a way.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
definitely. And that's why when you just, that first moment when you meet people, that is the crucial moment. You have to establish yourself. Sometimes people will even ask you, oh, are you the guide? And I just kind of look at them confused. I don't know what you mean, you know. Sort of, well, my name is, you know, and then I just carry on. So it's very important to have authority to establish this is what's going on, but without saying it, you know.
Yeah.
That is the trick, I would say.
That's a really good point. That's a good point. Do you find, is there a specific tour form that matches certain visitor groups better than others? So for example, kids or adult groups, do they prefer one tour form over the other?
I don't like to group people that way, because some adults are very keen on a dramatized tour, and they actually get more from it than a guided tour, I think, because they're entertained. And so that goes for children and adults both. I think it's a matter of whether or not you are open to it, because I have had one or two guests, it's very rare, that were openly not ready for a dramatized tour. So I think it's more whether or not your audience in some way is prepared to do a dramatized tour, if they understand the implications it has. But that happens before I meet them. So yeah.
That's a really good point. They kind of have to know in advance what awaits them.
Yeah, they do. They have to be warned.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. You see, if that's one aspect of my work, when I've been working with visitor guides and visitor hosts and so on, that I wanted your perspective on as well, because they're always, especially if you're working with new guides who may not have much experience in doing guided tours, there are always two concerns I find that pop up from time to time. One of them being about knowledge. If you're new, you might feel, oh, I have to know everything. I have to read every history book and I have to go through all the exhibitions and know all about this. The other one is about language. If you are doing a guided tour in a language that's not your own, so for you and me being native Danish speakers, if we are doing English, a tour in English, or I'm working now with in the UK with people who has English as a second or third language, and there's always I think an element of you become very self-conscious in a way, and can I make myself understood and so on. The thing about these two concerns is that the answer to them, I find, is usually the same, because yes, obviously you need to know something, but you don't need to know everything. That's impossible. Knowledge can be acquired. About languages, you obviously you have to make yourself understood, but it doesn't really matter if you have an accent, because what people respond to, what visitors respond to essentially, is your enthusiasm and your passion for the stories you are trying to convey. And I wanted to ask you, with this in mind, what does it actually require from you to do tours? Not so much in terms of skill set, but more in terms of your mentality and your mindset.
I do think it helps to actually know what you're talking about, because for me, I feel more comfortable. The more I know about a character, the more I can inhabit them.
It gives you a confidence.
It gives me a great confidence, and it gives me natural ease once I know what I'm talking about. But that's also a personal question. I think we all want to be 100% all the time. And we have to remember that our audience probably, they don't know anything. So, or maybe some of them do. Some of them really know a lot. But most of them don't know anything, and they're just happy to know something. So I think what is really important is that whatever you do, whether you're a guide or in character, and even if you are a character that's harsh or serious, that you are still kind to your audience. I really thought about that, because that's sometimes a problem. But I've seen also actors who when they perform with their audience, that even if they say really nasty things to them, they do it with sort of a tongue-in-cheek, sort of like smile, and you have to have a little bit of an eye contact, and like you understand we're just so you really have to, it's really important, especially during dramatized tours, that you have the connection to your audience all the time. You're actually having a conversation with them where you just do all the talking. So sometimes I make my audience talk.
Yeah. That's a good point, because what you're saying is that people also, and I think we all do that, we respond to kindness, don't we, really, very strongly. Yeah.
And I can be sometimes very strict, so people get scared of me.
But that's another good point, because people in your role, I mean, sometimes you have to be a bit strict if people are, touching artifacts they're not allowed to, or stepping into areas where visitors are not allowed, and so on. Sometimes you have to be.
You have to be very, very conscious that your audience isn't afraid of you, basically, and that you have a sort of a conversation with them, that you bring them along in what you're talking about, that you don't lose them. Because even if I have a good English, which I think I do, sometimes I have people who don't. So they will not understand what I'm talking about, because my words are too difficult. They're too many syllables. And so they'll just stand and look at me like, what did you just say? And then I have to try and explain it more. So you have to be in conversation with people. You can have a script or a manual, but you will still need to always have that eye contact and check your audience all the time, which can be difficult when you have 30 people with you.
True, but that's a really good point as well, because there's an immense amount of psychology in this. Even when you have foreign visitors and tourists, and their English might not be very good, but you still have to give them a good experience. You still have to connect with them, as you say.
Yeah,
there's an immense amount of psychology in that.
I often try to sort of find the tricks, like what would interest a child, what would interest a woman. Where can I connect with her? I would say, oh, I'm so proud of my child or my children, and then look to the older woman, and she will perhaps not understand much of everything else, but she knows this one thing, and it's obvious that she herself is a mother, and she just goes, yes.
Yeah.
So you have that connect. It's a dirty trick, but it works. And with children, oftentimes, if you pull them out, you have to be careful, obviously, because they can get scared. But if they're up for it and you're very careful, you can also bring them out and activate them, make them your helper, or teach them something, because children shine when they can learn something. They love that. And if it's something that's doable, it shouldn't be too difficult. So bring the letter to the king. The table is over there, so they can go from their mum and 2 meters over to a table, and they do something. Oh, very well done indeed. Just little simple things like that, and it just really works a trick.
It kind of brings me to my next question, because we've talked about this, you and I, quite a bit when we work together, that sometimes you get a group that may not be that keen. We've all seen the school tours, for example, where a group of students have been brought along by a teacher and they don't really want to be there. What do you do as a visitor host, a guide, when you get a group of youngsters and they just don't want to be there and they're not really interested at all?
Well, I try to sympathize with them by understanding that, okay, it's their experience of history, which is my field, is that it's boring. And I've worked as a teacher, so I know that kids find it boring and it's sad. And then I explain to them that it's my favorite subject, because then we're starting to connect. I understand you don't like it. It's my favorite. I think it's amazing. And I think it's very wrong to teach in class, because then they start to, oh, maybe it's different, So I actually have a real conversation where I say, I understand if you find it boring, if it's not your favorite subject, but I promise you I will do everything I can so that you will enjoy yourself. And then I try to bring them in and activate them, and I also tell them it's okay to lie down on the floor and things like that, especially teenagers, because they're notoriously tired. So they need to lie down for longer bits and then they relax. It's not a battle that we're fighting. We're working together,
Oh, that's a wonderful approach. Yeah.
Well, I have worked as a teacher, so I've learned the hard way.
But again, because you're again talking about an understanding and a connection, and that's really key, isn't it? It's really vital when doing this.
Whoever you speak to, you have to find out who they are, be interested in them, because then they want to know you too. And also, usually it's okay, because I say that it's okay if you don't get everything. Mm-hmm. That's more on the guided tour, I would say. You can have that conversation. You don't have to remember everything. I can tell you everything you want to know, and I can if you ask me. And I can tell you what I think you should know, but you don't have to remember everything, because I think there's a natural sort of stopper to people. They just, oh no, it's work. And then they just shut the brain off.
When do you know, when you've done a guided tour or a dramatized tour, there's sometimes these moments where this has worked and people have really connected with you and with the story? Are there sort of moments where that you can use to sort of measure, yes, this has worked?
That's so hard, especially because I work with people from all over the world and people respond differently.
Yeah.
I would say, especially Europeans and especially Northern Europeans, bar the English, of course, I would say we are very serious when we go on tours. It doesn't matter whether it's a guided or a dramatized tour. We're very sort of like,
we behave.
I have to pretend I'm dead for half an hour, and then I can have a reaction afterwards. So you just don't know, and you work, and you're like, oh, are you there? Is it okay? And then afterwards, that was a really good tour.
And they almost
thank you. And then you have the audiences who are used to it, and I would especially say the Anglo world, the English, Scottish, Welsh, etc., Americans, all that. They're so used to being an audience. They're cheering you on, clapping, and in the end, and they're very kind and everything, but in the end, you just don't know if they've actually enjoyed it more than everybody else. So it's such a cultural issue that it's really difficult to say. But when people take the time to come up afterwards and give you a proper compliment and say, listen, that was really important to me. I really learned something and it was really enjoyable. That's, again, it's making the effort. And when people make an effort, you can kind of
something, yeah.
It's not the applause. It's not that people cheer you. It's when they actually come up to you and go, that was really, really interesting or exciting or whatever. Yeah. So
that's such a confidence.
That's when you know.
Yeah.
Or if you meet them later in the day and they go, wow, that was a really great tour.
Yeah.
Okay, you remember me. Okay.
But that means it has really worked, isn't it? They remember that tour still. Yeah, exactly. Fantastic.
or if you meet them and they go, where were the somethings or the
Yeah.
thing you talked about there, or, you know, follow-up questions.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. I love follow-up questions. That's my favorite. It's better than a compliment, I think.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Josepha, just towards the end, visitor tours. It's an ongoing work, really. We always keep changing them, developing them, honing them. We talk of them often as being alive. They're never really a finished piece of work.
No.
How do you see the tour develop in the future? Do you think that the sort of traditional guided tour, is it here to stay, or are tours going to develop into some very different forms in the future?
Well, I think even the guided tour is very versatile, I would say. Because I don't do it like my forebears did. I would say when I think of a guided tour, I think very much of a very serious person who will state facts and not sort of link them up to a story or try to put superlatives on it. But it's very it's very traditional museum kind of information. It was the year 1832, and the master of the building was blah, 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 whatever, you know. And it's so, and I don't do guided tours like that. I storytell and I put drama into them. So even when I do a guided tour, I think that has developed very much. I think there's, depending on what we are capable of doing, I think especially the dramatized tour can develop into something amazing where people learn by doing, where they are actively participating. I mean, we're seeing, where I work, we're seeing the beginnings of that. And it's something that really interests me, to engage people to actually try it and feel it rather than just be told how it is. Because it's a much better way of learning. Our bodies are still a part of the experience the brain gets, I think. So it's very important to have all the senses activated. And if we can work towards that, I think that is the future, really.
Fantastic point. Josepha, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful talking to you. Thank you. One of the most important things about doing visitor tour work is about displaying and conveying an enthusiasm and a passion, really, for the storytelling and for the interpretation that you want to share with visitors. It's really about taking visitors on that little journey, sometimes back in time and sometimes into an entirely new world. Have you experienced a really good guided tour? If so, what made it good? Please add your comments, like, subscribe, and let's start sharing some more.